So, last week in the survey, we found out that 67% of working parents are either very or extremely stressed. And obviously, a really big part of that is the homeschooling, which I know we all find an absolute total nightmare. I personally had a little bit of a crisis this week. I got sent some very beautiful newsletters from the teaching staff at school, which kind of, had scans of everybody's amazing work from last week and all their projects and what they were supposed to do. And I realised that not only were none of our children's work included, but actually we hadn't done any of the work. That was because they hadn't done any of the work. And so the chances of them being included were pretty slim, let's face it. So I've tried to buck up this week. It's not gone brilliantly. So I'm taking some advice. I called Pippa Wright, who's totally and utterly lovely and brilliant. She used to be the deputy head of our school before she went on to be the head of another primary school. She's also got 3 kids of her own. And so I really wanted her take of how seriously we should be taking this, how much pressure are we supposed to be putting on ourselves. And I must say, she was incredibly reassuring. Her perspective of somebody who's worked in schools with kids that really, really have problems was very refreshing and a little bit humbling and useful. So I encourage you to take a look.
What kind of things would you be saying to families that are feeling really overwhelmed and want to do the right thing, but are just don't feel like they're doing very well right now?
Just play to your strengths. It's not about trying to learn new skills all of a sudden and then become this expert at something that you're finding difficult, because that's only going to stress you out, which will then stress your kids out and then stress your partner out, because all they can do is just see how stressed everybody else is. Like I say, it's such a short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. You're not going to do any damage if you do things sensibly and do things logically and just do things that you feel comfortable with.
I've got to tell you, I feel so much better for having had this conversation. It's like personal therapy. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not that bad.
Like, they won't unlearn all that they've learned across all of these months and years. Otherwise, again, there's something quite wrong with the makeup of education if they unlearn everything in 4 weeks because their parent tried to teach them. But what they probably will need is like a transition back into learning. Across the academic year, teachers, leadership, they track and monitor children anyway, so it isn't just a case of at the end of the year they'll have all this data and now they haven't got a clue where the children are at. Anyone worth their salt would already know roughly where they're at. There are lots of children out there still that are living in overcrowded houses or flats. A lot of children are basically carers for younger siblings, so the parents might be working, or there might be a lot of children in that household, so lots of the older siblings are then looking after the younger siblings. They don't always have access to internet or even electronic devices, so they get their entire educational experiences from schools. And that includes local trips, that includes books, that includes reading, that includes writing, that includes just talking about things beyond, their local environment. And it's those children that will find this the hardest. And it's those families that will find this the hardest. My advice to any parent is just don't stress about it. Don't worry about it. I know lots of teachers that have been encouraged, provide some work, but they're not going to collect it in and they're not actually going to mark it because they don't know how much the child's done to the adult. It's more just about supporting, if that is a supporting device, but if it's causing you and your household more stress, then just forget about it.
Thanks, Pippa. That was absolutely lovely. It was great to talk to you. The link to the full audio is underneath the video. So the other thing that's been on my mind this week is that I've been sent a number of articles suggesting that the current working remotely is going to be the end of gender inequality in the workplace. That because we can now all work flexibly, we will do going forwards, and that will solve our problems. Without wishing to be too much of a downer on it, I am a bit sceptical, and I'm sceptical for 3 different reasons. The first is that I've spoken to quite a lot of people who are feeling really pressured in terms of their performance and are being asked questions about their commitment because they're not able to work full time and also care for kids. or other people in their households. And I'm also hearing from HR leaders about them being asked to be engaged in performance reviews with people who are seen to be not committed during this time. I wonder how that plays out going forward. The second is around furloughing, and people telling me that more women are being offered furloughing in their organisation than men. This is really kindly and generously intended. The problem is how it plays out, whether those people get their jobs back, whether they get them back on the same terms, and also how people who were around in the crisis and productive during the crisis are perceived versus those who were not. The third issue to flag is that Transport for London put out data this week saying that in order to comply with any sort of social distancing, they would have to run tubes at 15% of capacity. Now, if we play that out across buses and trains across the country, I think there's a troubling concern in the back of my mind that the only people going to get into their workplaces are going to be those that can get up at 5 in the morning and be front of the queue. Anyone doing a school run, a nursery run, trying to get in at 9 may never get there. And in an economically different world where business is really, really hard won, I wonder who's going to be rewarded for their time and effort, whether it's the people who get into the office or the people who can't. So those are my concerns. I hope to be proved wrong. I hope the research and the reports coming out are right, but I just want to keep an eye on this and watch it going forward. Thanks so much for listening. The full details are in the article as well as the link. Thank you again to Pippa. And in the meantime, I need to go now because I really, really need to make sure that I can get into next week's newsletter. And I'm feeling quite optimistic about this lovely drawing of Spain. Talk to you soon. Thank you.